I thought we would start this episode, thanks to Christine and a little help, the same way that you start the Wabash River Defenders every year before we go out to clean. And so I thought I would, for our guest, with your help maybe, just the chorus, start the on the banks of the Wabash.
The moonlight's bright tonight along the Wabash. From the fields there comes the scent of new mown hay. Through the sycamores the candle lights are gleaming. On the banks of the Wabash far away.
You just feel like you have to clap after that, right?
Absolutely.
Well done, gents. Well done.
Well done. So welcome to the podcast studio, and thank you for joining us on ThriveIN. In this episode of ThriveIN, we've got Mike Beauchamp and Jen Rankin, as well as my co-host, Christine Flohr. And we're going to be talking all about the Wabash River Defenders and how the organization got started, what kind of accomplishments they've had along the way, and kind of where the future is going to take the organization. So welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Thrilled to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely.
Mike, you started off prior to us really recording here by showing a picture of a bus. This has a lot of meaning to you, doesn't it?
It does. I have been up and down the Wabash River the full length 3 times, once down and twice up. And each time I came by a spot in kind of southern Indiana, and that bus was on the river. And every time I passed that bus, I thought, boy, I would like to help clean up the river some way or another. I had no idea, but that bus really motivated me. It's hard to imagine a bus in the Wabash River.
And so when would that have been in your life?
Well, Parker was 21, Chelsea was 21, and Haley was 21. So that's 2001, 2003, and 2005 or 6, something like that. Okay.
And so you saw that bus. You had been down the Wabash here, I'm assuming, as a young boy. You seem like you were always out in nature from the stories I've been told.
I got my first rowboat when I was 4, and I've sort of had a paddle in my hand every year since. And yeah, I've kind of added up my miles paddling, and it's about 8,000 miles. I've done the Wabash, did the Tippecanoe, the Eel, did a lot of paddling up in the Boundary Waters and up in the Quetico. So
you have a real connection with the water, and it provides you some enjoyment, relaxation maybe. So when you see something like that bus in southern Indiana, does that have a reflection on the Wabash that you knew here in Wabash County also?
Well, yes. Having traveled the entire length of the river, I mean, there was debris all along, and nothing quite as big as a school bus, but it needed attention, particularly here in what we call the middle Wabash, where the depth of the water isn't so deep. You get down south of Lafayette or down toward Terre Haute, Vincennes, on down there, the water's quite deep and the river's quite large, and so you don't see the debris the way you do up here.
So here it's more visible, but it also makes it a little easier to clean up as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it would be impossible to do the job we've done in some of these other deeper, wider places.
Yep. So let's go back to the beginning. I know you and Jen have referred to yourselves as river rats. When those river rats first got together in LeGros, tell me about that. How did that all start?
I love this story. I'd go out to the LeGros Cafe for breakfast, and I had a good friend out there, John Lawson. The Lawson family's kind of the cornerstone of LeGros, and John and I had been friends for a long time. He knew about all my river antics, and he said, Mike, I've got a couple of people you've got to meet this morning. And he took me over and introduced me to Gary and Susan Hunter and John, and I'm going to get emotional here, John and Gloria Flohr. And it went from there. We sat down and had breakfast together, drank coffee, and we were talking about the river and how messy it was. And I told them about my trips, and somebody said, well, let's start cleaning this up. And we kind of scratched out a plan to try to gather up 25 people that year and see if we couldn't start a project. And, well, we started meeting at the Rock City every week.
Oh, I've got to interrupt you, Michael J. Beauchamp. He skipped more of the beginning of how this came to be.
Okay.
I have to clarify a piece of this.
Well, my mind's losing it, so I look forward
you
to it.
also have a lot more in your filing cabinet to keep straight. Picture it. February 14th.
Yeah,
Freezing,
Valentine's Day.
freezing cold. He tells me I need you to come meet some of my river rat friends at the LeGros Cafe. We've got this idea. I said,
Yeah,
What is
it wasn't an easy sell.
this idea? He's like, we got this idea. We think we can get people to volunteer to clean out the entire section of the Wabash River from county edge to county edge. I said, number one, I have no skills. I am not a river rat. And two, nobody's going to do that, Michael. So I said, nobody is going to do that, Michael. But Michael has this uncanny ability to gather the right people around a project. And that is something I have said about you for years.
Well, this is a special county, and river rats are special people.
Yes, they are. I learned that quickly. And so you can pick up from there, but what quickly went from you're not going to get anybody. And my role really was to walk along Michael and the other river rats and pick up the breadcrumbs that they needed. And so I helped be your organizer.
You did.
Is that the best way to, in the beginning?
You were a big aid
Yeah.
towards organizing, because river rats by nature are not organizers.
Big
And
hearts.
we'd go to the Rock City, and there were 10 or 12 of us around that table and shouting and hooting and hollering. And I wondered week by week if we'd made any progress. But sure enough, by the time that first last Saturday in July came about, we had 350 people. And we divided up the river like adopt a highway. We divided it into 20 sections because it's 20 miles across. And we had 20 teams, and they were all going to clean up a mile of the river. Didn't quite work out that smoothly. Some had to clean up several miles, and there wasn't an entrance or an egress at every mile. But basically, that was the plot. And to a large degree, we still use that today.
Jen, you were part of those original river rats
Yes.
in year one. And
Excuse me, I got teary there.
what do you remember about those early days?
Oh my goodness. How impressed I was. How these two right here, Christina Flohr and Mike Beauchamp, went from a handful of people having coffee at the LeGros Cafe to 6 months later having over, and he says 350. Honestly, when it comes to all the land teams and everyone that was involved in some way in our community, it was 400.
The other thing about river rats is that they're hard to count,
They really are.
because there are people that aren't signed up and you don't even know them, and all of a sudden they're there that day, and 3 or 4 hours later they disappear into the woods or wherever, and you never do learn what their names were or get them registered. And that is still true. Some of those people out east of LeGros, and I mentioned Gary Hunter, he really was the commander of the troops east of LeGros. Those people don't like to come to the organizing meeting. They don't want to hear the speech. They don't want to sing the song. They just want to clean up the river. And so we don't have a real good count sometimes on how many people there were.
Those first couple of years when you did, I've always heard the number 400 of volunteers that were showing up, and the mountain of debris that was pulled out of that river that was piled up by Paradise Springs Southern parking lot. How many tires in those first couple of years? Any idea?
The first couple years, we actually brought in approximately 3,000 tires just in the first couple years. That's one thing that we're enjoying today is we're seeing such a decline in those numbers. So it's just physically showing the impact that we're having.
You were instrumental, Jen, and where Michael and I, I was his organizer and he was building it out. If we didn't have someone like you as a strong, tremendous partner, and I know, Mike, you're going to agree with me, you made it easy then for those who are cleaning out the debris to help us organize and sort it at that Paradise Spring parking lot. You were instrumental. And again, it goes back to the heart of this community. Without you, what were we going to do without all of it,
Well, let me step in here. The Wabash County Solid Waste District, we could not have done this without them. They have invested tens of thousands of dollars to get all these nearly 6,000 tires recycled. And a basic car tire is $3 to recycle it. Some of those tractor tires, $15, $20. And the partnership with the Solid Waste District was crucial. And I think Steve Johnson was real involved in those beginning years.
Yes, he
too.
was. We can't forget
he was.
him. He set the precedent for me. So by watching him and his involvement and partnership in this, I was able, when I became the executive director out there, I was able to see where that need was and try to build that as a strong community collection of efforts. And, we have to remember something. This is a collective effort. Like I said, it takes every one of us, not on a policy scale, on an individual scale. What people don't stop and think about is that a healthy ecosystem is tied directly to human health. We're connected. We're not a separate entity. And I think people forget about that. And through educating our youth in some of my programs, I saw that so much clearer than a lot of people do. And that's what fueled my fire to become a partner in this. I don't have nearly the experience as him. As a matter of fact, I was in the river cleaning one year and a snake wrapped around my leg.
I never volunteered to go in. I told Michael from day one, I will be on the land the whole time. Kudos, Jen. Kudos, he returned.
That's the way it used to be. People thought ill of the river, and for good reason. The factories dumped into it. The sewer treatment plants overflowed into it. Our town landfill was alongside the river. Farmers dumped, people dumped, everybody dumped. And it's not just true of the Wabash or Indiana. It's the world over. That's how rivers are treated. You throw it in, it goes down river. Next people have to worry about that, not me.
Out of sight, out of mind.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up the education piece, and I want to come back to that a little bit later because I know that that's so important to the organization now. Of all the trash that was taken out of the river, what I really, really appreciate is that it didn't just go to a landfill. I think something like 75% has been recycled. Is that correct?
That's the average over the entire span of this collective effort. 75% we were able to find a home for, to recycle, reuse, anything we could to keep it out of the landfill.
It's now become, I think, Mike, you and I, we were together on New Year's Day for a river float that some of us did, and we mentioned then that the river cleanup now isn't quite what it was when it first started. It's now almost a celebration of the river and the time and the effort that's been put in up to this point.
Absolutely. I have a few people every year. Well, we're not bringing out as much. Do we really need to do this year? So being president of the River Defenders now, I always pose that question to all of our volunteers. And I almost get an, are you kidding me? We're going to do this. We don't care if we get out 2 pieces of paper. We're going to do this. And everyone still shows up. It's just heartwarming. It's a miracle. These people refuse to let this go. And I love every one of them. They're family now.
I'm out there almost every year, and it's almost exciting when a kid finds a tire. It's like finding a morel mushroom in the spring.
Absolutely.
Because it used to be you
Riddled.
couldn't take 2 steps and you were going to kick a tire, and now it's like, oh, I got one, and everybody's over there trying to dig it out of the river bottom. And
we used to use our eyes to find tires. that isn't the case anymore. You have to have eyes in your feet to find a tire. The hydrology of the river is such that tires that were covered over last year are uncovered this year. And if you're lucky enough to have your foot find one, you've got a tire. But it's becoming rare to find a tire.
It really is, yeah. Through the Wabash River Defenders, you, as an organization, you guys were recognized by another organization downstream, if I've done my research right. Is there a group out of Lafayette that recognized the Wabash River Defenders in those early days?
Well, there is a similar group in Lafayette. They have a cleanup in the city of Lafayette, and they mostly produce students for that. They also have like our River Wild, a youth program where they go down the river a number of miles in rafts, and they were very helpful to us. They may have recognized us, and I forgot.
Well, some of the recognition that we have been so blessed to receive is our Indiana Attorney General at the time, Greg Zollner. We have been recognized by the Wabash Heritage Corridor Commission. They support us every year. We have been recognized in other states. I've actually had groups of people come from other states. How is this done? How do we get started? What do we do? You're incredible. We have been written about by DNR. The state of Indiana has recognized us. At this point, and I'm sorry if I choke up, it warms my heart. But at this point, we're one of the first groups looked at for some of the major grant programs through the state of Indiana for waterways, cleaning up and preserving and water testing. So quality, that's something when we went from a group in LeGros Cafe to today where the state is contacting us, hey, we've got extra funds from projects that were never completed. Are you interested?
We'll talk about the funds you raised just this last year for our stream bank erosion project.
Excuse me. Well,
Jen did a huge job.
it was. I'm not going to deny it. It was a lot of hours of work and commitment, phone calls. And
First of all, there's an erosion that took place out between LeGros and Wabash. Won't mention
and
whose
it
or
was
where's. But it was recognized as the largest stream bank erosion in the north part of Wabash River. This is the DNR.
Absolutely. Over the last couple decades, they, through aerials, had discovered that there were many acres of land lost. And one thing that it was doing, people tell me, well, the river's wild. Don't mess with it. You can't change the direction. No, but preservation is important. And what was happening in this area was that area has one of the deepest holes in our area of the river. It was washing and eroding so much into that they were projecting that we were going to lose that section of the river. It was going to turn into a sandbar. So, one of the things is that's a great area for bottom feeders. We need to preserve our natural habitats for our natural species in our area. And bottom feeders are huge. Well, when it's full of silt and debris, they can't get to the bottom to eat. That's just a very basic way of putting it. But we decided we were going to combat this area. I whined about it, and that's the truth. I whined about that area for years before we were able to figure out what are we going to do. And working with DNR and others, we made the decision to combat that area and do an erosion control. We had contractors come in who specialize in that type of process and tell us what needed to be done, how much we were going to need to raise, and it was pretty incredible. So I was put to the task over about a 9-month period. I managed to raise almost $500,000 for that project.
Wow.
It is now complete. I invite anyone to go out and look at it. It is beautiful. It preserved nature. It's preserving the river. We're going to put some signage out there. The project, let me back up for a minute, was just completed about 3 weeks ago. So we're still working on our education signage. Another thing I love about it is, and I'm sorry, I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, but in our education program, students will be able to see that. And then they can learn about flood control and erosion control and runoff and, all the pollutants that are a threat to the health of the river in areas like that. So,
Wow, congratulations. What'd you do last year? Did you raise $500,000? I didn't either. Brilliant.
That was
Bravo.
amazing.
Yeah.
I was very skeptical at the beginning of when this started, and Jen proved me wrong.
I was bound and determined. I sunk my teeth in and said, we're going to do this.
It's happening. It is
Because,
happening.
like I said, I literally did whine for years about it until I was like, okay, we just got to do something here. I can't whine every year. People are getting tired of hearing it.
Oh, and it didn't change anything other than it was just still your concern.
Absolutely. It didn't change a thing. So we were blessed. It wasn't just me, kicking the pavement to find that money. It was those out there wanting to help with projects like this.
The DNR came to us.
Absolutely,
First
they did.
with 100,000, then next year another 100,000.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
So DNR, we have through the state of Indiana, the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, we have a grant program called the 319 grant. 319 funds are put aside for water quality. So it's preservation, restoration, water quality in itself, testing. And then I was able to go to a federal level through Fish and Wildlife, and they have a similar program as well. And I got the remainder of the funds through them.
There was a business along the river that had to pay a fine or submit to a mitigation grant. And they were working with IDEM, and they rather give a grant to some nonprofit than pay a fine. And IDEM said, well, go to the Wabash River Defenders. They can use this. And that's how we started our River Wild project. We bought 15 rafts and cargo trailer and life jackets and blow-up equipment and all this stuff. Then we got more money after that, another $20,000. It turned into $100,000. But
Right.
it was because IDEM recognized the Wabash River Defenders.
That's the kind of reputation that we have been privileged to enjoy over the last few years.
Well, congratulations on all of that. And Mike, thank you for bringing up the River Wild, because that's kind of has been the group from going to clean up the river to now educating our youth on the importance of keeping it clean. And through the River Wild program, our local youth that are in 7th grade, is that correct?
7th grade.
Yes.
7th graders from MSD schools, Manchester and Wabash,
Yes.
Yeah.
all get the opportunity to go down the river and not just float and have a good time, but also learn during that as well.
Before we had the rafts and the money to buy the rafts, we had what we called the Junior River program, and she was very involved with that. We would have a clean out, just like on the Wabash River, only we'd take, I think it was 4th graders, we'd go to the city park, and we'd clean out Charlie Creek, and we'd sing the song and have the speech and everything.
We kind of borrowed from a very famous song called Fins Up. And we would have the kids, put their hands up in the air and say a pledge to always preserve and protect our waterways. But I want to add one thing to Charlie Creek. We had a lot of naysayers. Well, you shouldn't do it there. That's the cleanest area in the city. You won't find anything. Those kids went a quarter mile up that creek and a quarter mile down that creek, a group of 4th graders, and collected over 300 pounds of trash.
Wow.
And they had a blast doing it. They were finding snakes and just picking them up. Look, Miss Rankin. Miss Rankin's up a tree screaming,
Yeah.
but
Jen also went into a number of classrooms and talked about these programs, spreading the education again to very young people. And just to lead into this, you'd probably say it if I didn't, kids are our future. And taking care of the river is going to be in the hands of our youth someday. And if we can get them to be believers today, hopefully they'll follow through and even carry this to a greater position than we have.
And I know it's working. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've been stopped in the grocery or one of the other shopping stores and by parents who said, thanks a lot. My child came home, dumped the trash can in the middle of the floor and made me sort it. Yeah. And now insists that we do recycling. You know, kudos.
That's right. Absolutely.
And like you said, Mike, they're learning about the importance of the river, but just in not throwing out trash in general. They're seeing what happened out of their control from past generations and how that's impacted them.
Amen.
So they'll see it across the board. I have talked to firemen that show up and volunteer during that event, school teachers, parents that look forward to going every year, even if their kids have moved on. If given the opportunity, they want to be there. It's such a fun day to see the youth. Some of them, it's the very first time that they've ever been on the river.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the first things we ask them when they get there is, how many of you have ever been on the river? And you'd be surprised at the small number of them. How many of you have ever been in a kayak or a canoe or in a raft? And, you know, they're all looking like,
we've got
half
about
of them are scared.
2,400 seventh graders in the river since this began.
Yep.
And, you know, that first year when we had 400 people in the river, most people in the county hadn't been in the river. Oh, we don't want to go in there. That's over 1% of our population in the river on one given day. Yeah. It says, and they came from Manchester, too. They came from, we've got, you did a podcast with John and Lene Abnett. They drive from Geneva, Indiana every year to come over here. There are people that come from lots of places to participate in this, and it says a lot about river rats.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that happened or was said one year that to me has always just tugged at my heart. We had an 80-year-old woman come one year with her family, and she said, this river has always been my backyard, and until now I had never been on it.
Wow.
And she was so impressed and so in love with it. You know, from that point on, it was a part of her life.
During the River Wild, my youngest, he went through it as a seventh grader, and I was out there in one of those rafts at the time. I remember stopping along the river at different times where DNR would be out there and they would be talking about the beaver or other wildlife. Is that still part of the River Wild program?
Absolutely. We have anywhere from 5 to 6 stops along the way. I have educators from some of the best groups, DNR, Army Corps of Engineers, the Soil and Water Conservation District, and each one of them has an education segment. So we have natural habitats, native species. We have flood control. We have water quality. We have history. I mean, there's just a number of things that go on. You know, I used to teach on one of the shoals, and I missed that. I want to get back to it. One year, this is how much fun these kids have. One year, I'm talking about the fish that are native to our area and the invasive species, Asian carp, and teaching them all about them. I was standing right on the edge of the water, and I don't know why. I reached down and thought I was picking up a shell to show them. I pick it up, and it's a baby catfish. And these kids went nuts. They're like, how did you do that? And I'm bleeding. Well, I'll never do it again. But it was just so ironic. It's those little experiences that these kids, you know, the educators that day, their teachers and administration said they went back to school, and that's all they could talk about was Miss Rankin caught that fish with her hand. But they remembered everything about what they had learned that day because of that one little incident. And
I can't say enough about our school systems committing to this. I mean,
absolutely,
it stirs up their schedule, bus drivers, lunches, teachers, counselors, school resource officers. It's a big commitment for each school, and it speaks to Wabash.
Yes, it does.
Wabash County.
It really does. Having the river in our backyard plays such an important role in our community. And I think for a long time it wasn't utilized in the way that it could have been. And part of that was because it was so dirty. People didn't want to be on the river. Now it's recognized as one of the cleanest sections in the state. And then we have the river trail, which we covered in a past episode on this podcast that Amy Ford helped. And now we're talking about residential development along the river that would have never been thought about, decades ago. It's helped bring business to this area where we have Mike, your son, started the White Rock and kayaks and canoe rentals. It's what you guys have done going back, 15 years? Is that how long it's been?
2011 was that first year.
15 years ago. And I don't think that any of those river rats sitting in the LeGros Cafe at that time would have realized how much of an impact this would have had.
I don't think anyone envisioned it. But that was one of our main beginning thought processes was let's bring life back to the river. Let's utilize this wonderful resource with recreational activities, education activities. I mean, that's what drove us to this point.
Yep. I mean, with Salamone and Mississinawa and the campgrounds, now you've got Christine and the Visit Wabash County team and Get Out, Get Active. I mean, it's part of this community's marketing plan is because of this river. It really, really plays a key role in the vitality of our community.
Well, and vitality of LeGros community.
Absolutely.
The changes in LeGros since the river got cleaned up and the trail got put in, I mean, it's like a renaissance out there.
Yep, absolutely.
I think about the work that was done starting in 2011 and how you're exactly right, Adam. It was this precipice that occurred that the hope was river rats just wanted to see their river cared for. This community is the kind that hears an idea and then takes action. And then it just kept leading to the next level of investment because of the work of the Wabash River Defenders, you did bring value and connectivity back to the Wabash River in a way many hadn't connected with it in the past unless you grew up along it, the river. Lots of kids played in the Wabash River, especially those in LeGros along Basin Street, et cetera. That was just... Yeah. That was an old watering hole, right?
Yeah, to them it was.
For sure. But for the rest of these kids who are more landlocked or rural areas where they're not close to the river, they wouldn't have had that exposure or that connectivity or any reason to. So once you started connecting people into touching it and using it, because we don't live off the river anymore, right? We're not dependent on it to feed ourselves like we probably were at one time. That precipice to kicking off the connectivity to where we are today, 2 years later with Get Out, Get Active, and Visit Wabash County leaning into these outdoor recreation sites, the river is celebrated as a piece of that and then is this huge economic driver to other investments that Adam mentioned earlier.
I have to say, I don't think that we take full credit for all of that. It was a collectiveness.
Oh, for sure.
But I have to say this, too. We feel like proud parents. I mean, that's the simplest way to say it. We feel like proud parents. Every year, every success that we recognize, we feel like proud parents.
Sure.
There were so many individual contributors. I mentioned that John Flohr in the beginning. He was close to 80 years old. He rolled, and he worked year-round. He didn't just come out for one day. But he rolled 135 semi-tires up out of that river so that they could be collected by the solid waste district. Bobby Cash, he's a guy from LeGros. He is down, you mentioned the parking lot down there where we gather this stuff. He is there every year to separate that and get it ready to be picked up and distributed and all that. Nathan and Tiffany Thomas, they've been there every year. They choose to celebrate their anniversary every year, cleaning out the river. Wow. And he's been on the board and a financial contributor, he and she. They have been huge contributors. Roland McCourt, that year that Attorney General Zollner was here, we got enough Asian carp from Sullivan County brought up here. We wanted to treat people to what Asian carp's like. Very hard to clean. Rollin cleaned enough Asian carp to feed 600 people.
Oh my God.
And you know, every bite was eaten. I was busy doing administrative things, if you will. By the
Wise.
time I got there, there wasn't a bite left. Thank you very much, River Rats.
The Isaac Walton League
Oh, yeah.
helps put on meals and helps with these River Wild programs. The Knights of Columbus helped before that. Straussville Feeds helped us with our water testing. The city of Wabash, Bob Gray at the sewage treatment plant did testing. We couldn't have afforded to send all that stuff out, even with the grant money we had. I just have example after example of people like this that
It's a different story, but the same story over and over again. It doesn't matter if it's the dam to dam or if it's going to be this new cleanup that Christine and Amy Ford are working on for spring of 2026, or it's River Defenders. This community shows up, whether it's financial or in person or their ideas. They show up and they get it done
Yes, they do.
over and over again.
I
You
read
know,
a
I moved here
report.
20 years ago, and I really wasn't sure I was going to stay. And it literally took me no time to absolutely adopt this community as my own, fall in love with it, and stay. I'm here by myself. I have no family, but I don't care. I have a ton of family.
Yeah. Some of my very best friends have come about because of the river. I mean, it's changed my life, really.
We
So,
talked about that earlier, Mike and I. The friendships we've made are just irreplaceable. And all through this organization, we've made lifelong friends. And it's a lifelong commitment to me.
I had up serve on the Wabash River Heritage Corridor Commission, statewide commission. The river flows through 19 counties. Most people probably don't know that. But all these commissioners and a troop from the DNR and the state government came up to LaGrow, Indiana, and we had our meeting in LaGrow. We go from county to county, and we try to showcase what's going on in different counties. And they came to LaGrow, and with White Rock, we got canoes and put all those commissioners in canoes, and we came down to Wabashiki Landing, which is that spot you get off the river. And they all said, you know, we know what our county's like. We know what the river's like. This is the most pristine part of the Wabash River in the state of Indiana. And it's due to the fact that this was the greatest volunteer cleanout in the state of Indiana. There's none other like it. So
That very first year, you were dubbed the largest river cleanup in the state of Indiana right out of the gate.
Absolutely.
That speaks volumes about the hearts of those who wanted to help serve and protect.
It absolutely does.
And just being asked. You know, maybe they didn't even know what they were getting into that day, you know? I've seen the photos that on your Facebook page, though, and any of our listeners will have that linked in our show notes, but the photos of the barges that people build and how proud they are of what they've collected and that joy in their hearts, because it's hard work. I mean, you've talked about people getting together and digging tires out and
oh yeah, couches and cars
Sure.
and school buses
and think how heavy,
Refrigerators.
and
Yeah.
it's wet and it's full of water
and mud.
and mud, silt. And so I encourage those who are listening to this episode to go to the Wabash River Defenders Facebook page. You have to see these photos, but you have to see the joy on these faces.
There's not one with anyone frowning.
No.
You know, I know one year we pulled out carpet. Holy smokes,
Oh.
carpet stores.
Heavy, I
Yeah.
bet. Oh, man.
We threw it on the boat, and it took the boat right in half. So then we had a boat to collect as well. But you see people with these big, heavy items, and there's not a frown. There isn't anyone looking like I'm devastated. And they're all grinning and smiling and having a great time. It's such an accomplishment. It's such a feeling of just giving and being a part of something. It's wonderful.
What does the future look like for the organization?
Growth. I want to expand a little more on our education programming. I want to continue. Well, no one's not going to let me continue with the cleanup. That's a given.
They're in it.
That's absolutely right. We've been trying other new, smaller activities just to get some new blood, if you will, like the build your own raft race that we had. That we only had a couple teams participate, but they had a blast. That's something we'd like to grow a little more, because that really was fun. I'd like to get more people involved in River Wild. We have to be careful. I know a lot of people have a lot of ideas about that. We have to be very careful that what we're teaching goes along with Indiana education standards, and there's security things that we have to pay attention to. But I would absolutely love to see more partnerships with other educators out there. Oh my goodness. Growth. That's what I see. I see an improvement in water quality. That's the biggest struggle. We can clean it, and we can put steps in place to help with the quality of water, like the erosion control and things like that. But that's critical. We need to continue. We need to address non-point source pollution. Non-point source means you don't know where it's coming from. Yeah. We need to find that. Point source pollution. We need to make certain that we're addressing those kind of things. It takes a collectiveness to do this. So we're talking about, policy on a larger level above us. And then we're talking about our little groups, like River Defenders, like these other counties that are, because they've been impressed with us. Peru decided they wanted to do something downstream.
Right.
Huntington County does something now. So that growth as well, I want to promote that growth.
Yeah, lots of these counties are talking about student river rides like we do. And there are 3 of them in the state. And the Wabash River Heritage Corridor is trying to figure out how to spread that to every county.
It's such an important aspect of what has come of the Wabash River Defenders in this education piece. In a future episode, I'm going to have the director of the NUT, the Northeast Indiana Water Trails, is coming into the studio to talk about the impact that groups like yours have had on the waterways all over Northeast Indiana and the opportunities that exist for recreation and education. So I'm really looking forward to having them on. I was going to say that there is an amazing River Wild YouTube video that I'm going to share in our show notes. So if you're listening to this, you're like wondering, what is the River Wild? I'm going to put a link to the episode to that on there as well so that we'll be able to see it. If people want to get involved, whether it's with River Wild or River Defenders on the cleanup day, how do they go about doing that?
It's relatively simple. You can contact us through our Facebook, wabashriverdefenders.org. We also have a website that is directly linked, so you can email through that. Ask anyone on the street. Most people know about us.
Yeah.
Most people know how to contact us. So ask around. But Facebook and our website is probably the easiest way to make direct contact.
Okay. And that's the last weekend of July?
For the last Saturday of July every year.
Okay. I always look forward to it every year.
Well, Adam's one of the guys that's been there from the very start all the way through. And it's people like you that have shown up and shown up and shown up. And we really appreciate your contribution to this, Adam.
Thank you. It's always a good time to get together. I'm one of those that probably doesn't get counted because I don't sign up. I just show up.
Yeah.
And I just join in.
You're a rat then.
I join in with a group of whoever I want to join in, and I bring my canoe. And
there are lots of people like that.
And I have a list. I just check you off every year.
I do it for the free T-shirt.
Yeah, speaking of
As
free
you should.
T-shirt, I wanted to show this year's T-shirt. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but this was one of the best ones. This was drawn by Dick Beamer and Clean Out the Banks 2025. We have a new T-shirt every year, and one of the ways people can help is to help sponsor this T-shirt. It helps pay for the event. One of the big costs for us is insurance, but you can contribute. We take money.
Okay. If there's a group of individuals in this community or outside of Wabash County who are like the original river rats and they've got this idea, what's a piece of advice that you give them, whatever that is that they want to do? Clean up trash along the riverway, a roadway, or something completely different. What's some helpful advice you pass along?
Sorry.
I would say stay committed, stay persistent. I think of Jack Porter and Glenn Tanner and that Hoosier Heartland roadway. They worked on that for years. I've got a friend down in Delphi, Indiana, Dan McCain. He has built that canal system down there, rebuilt the canal, built a canal boat, built a little canal city. He spent 50 years of his life of that. And so all great things don't come in a day. It takes time and commitment and persistence. And, you know, you
And
go
don't
through.
get discouraged.
You're right.
Everything is 2 steps forward, 1 back.
Yeah,
Just keep pushing forward.
yeah,
You know, passion.
yeah.
Christine, any last words you'd like to add?
You know, I remember the first cleanup the day I pulled into the parking lot really early in the morning, and written on one of the sides of the little dinghy boats was, "We all live downstream."
Keith Poole.
Keith Poole. And that resonated with me so deeply, and I can see it as clear as day still in my mind. Everyone lives downstream. And so to hold that close to your heart and to thank you both so much for taking that so literal, right? Leave it better than you found it.
Great way to wrap up. Couldn't have said it better.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christine.
Oh my gosh.
Mike, Jen, thank you for joining us in the studio. I'm looking forward to our listeners who maybe aren't familiar with what River Defenders is and what the impact that they've had in this community, for them to understand and hear it from some of the original river rats.
Been a lot of fun. Thanks a lot.
It has.
Just like the financial contributions that it takes to make River Defenders and River Wild possible, this podcast also takes financial contribution from people in this community. People like the Lisa Gilman Investment Fund, Sandra Kunkel Trust, Mark and Amy Ford, Paperworks Industries, the City of Wabash, the Community Foundation of Wabash County, and Visit Wabash County. This podcast is made possible by Destination Wabash County. Until next time, I'm Adam Stakeman, and we'll see you next podcast.